Welcome to Barbarian Builds. Join me while I craft this sailing ship. I based this build off of Ghost of Saltmarsh's sailing ship. If you don't know it yet, here's the battle map. Early on, I decided to add a few changes. I wasn't going to make the hold so I wouldn't need those stairs, and I would remove a couple of walls as well. I started by making a base layer out of XPS foam. As you can see, this was my second attempt at it. I miscalculated the length of the ship the first time around. Using this thinner 2cm XPS foam allowed me to cut it in one go. I cut two 3-inch wide pieces of cardboard for the walls of the ship, not really putting too much thought on the length of these pieces. On one side of these pieces, I cut out the shape for the stern of the ship. Then I slowly glued them together with hot glue, carefully aligning both the bottom and the stern. Once the walls were in place, I cut the excess at the bow, adding that rounded shape to the front of the ship. Then I glued a 2-inch piece of cardboard to the stern, shaping it as I went along, and also removing the remaining cardboard in the end. Then I cut out the cardboard for the main deck, not realizing I was tracing it wrong. With a couple of 2-inch pieces of cardboard, I made supports for the ship's masts. I rolled them tightly around the masts, making it a tight fit. And I made these round bases out of foam core. I removed the foam core's paper on one side, textured these bases with a sharp pencil, and then measured the placement for the masts. I cut holes in my main deck and glued my support pieces on the lower deck's floor, carefully aligning everything and doing this for all 3 masts. I found these textured EVA foam sheets and cut 1/2-inch wide and 2-inch long pieces, as these would be the wood planks used in most of the build. Their sizing would also provide an implicit grid to the players. Then I spent a couple of hours assembling all the lower deck's planks. After I was done, I realized my main deck wasn't going to cut it. I needed it to be wider. So I used a couple of pieces of foam core held together by XPS foam to make a new one. I had to carefully recut the mast's holes and then add the holes for the stairs and the cargo hatch. Cutting a lot of the deck's surface, I felt I should add a bit more support to it. Then, I started making the stairs with 1-inch pieces of foam core. I took the time to also make the stairs on the lower deck. And then it was time for more EVA foam planks. Using 1-inch pieces of cardboard, my EVA foam planks, and hot glue, I finished the lower deck, adding several rooms to it. To build a forecastle and the quarterdeck, I cut out 2-inch pieces of cardboard and 1-inch pieces of foam core. I assembled the stairs of both of these structures similarly to what I had done with the stairs to the lower deck. I used thin stripes of cardboard to make a lattice for the cargo hatch, and glued it underneath the main deck. Then I added more of my EVA foam planks to the forecastle and quarterdeck walls. I modeled the forecastle ceiling to be longer than the bow on the lower deck. Using this foam core, I also cut out a beam and a small triangle to keep the shape on the bottom. Gluing everything together, I started with a support beam, then added the ceiling and ended with a triangle once I already knew where it should be. This is also the best approach to trim the excess cardboard and make that rounded shape on the bow. When adding the EVA foam planks to the walls, I left a couple of empty spaces for the windows. Then I simply cut them out and added small stripes of cardboard to the windows. To make the railings, I used these matchstick-like pieces of wood I found in the craft store. I wanted to improve the bow's shape and add another mast to it. So I traced the bow's shape onto a piece of XPS foam and shaped it until I got what I wanted. I glued this piece to the lower deck and added these XPS ornaments on the sides. I shaved off bits of wood out of the mast so it wouldn't look as clean cut. I glued it to the bow and textured the XPS pieces with a pencil. To hide the mast's holes in the main deck, I added these rounded pieces of XPS foam. I textured them, glued them on, textured the masts themselves, and added support beams using the matchsticks again. On the lower deck, I glued a thin natural rope to the mast supports. Then, I 3D printed a ship's wheel and glued it on. I made a crow's nest, the same way I had done the mast support. I cut small slits on the mast to fit the horizontal beams for the sails, and I glued them on after having them shaved off to look older. I made a small rudder for the ship out of XPS foam. I roughly traced the ladder to the crow's nest, one step every half inch, and glued more of the previously mentioned matchsticks cut in half. For the sails, I used EVA foam, made holes in the upper corners, and they were done. Before I moved on, I wanted to add another mast to the stern of the ship. You can already guess what's coming, right? It's our good friend Mod Podge. Again, not a sponsor. I mixed it up with black acrylic paint and covered my whole build. When that was dry, I added a bit of black to a burnt sienna and painted the ship. I painted the ropes in the lower deck in a yellow ochre and the ship's wheels handles with a silver paint. Then I went off to dry brush everything with a burnt sienna, followed by a very subtle white. More about dry brushing in previous videos, links in the description. And we're done. Now we need to look at it. Hope you enjoyed this build. Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time...